Hello everybody, welcome back again to my channel. Thanks for taking another look at one of these custom builds that I'm doing. This time around it's a restoration and modification of a 1985 Corgi Zakspeed Capri. So first of all then, let's get the elephant out of the room with this being called a Zakspeed Capri, because underneath it's branded as a Ford Capri 3 Litre S. And any of us motorsport fans here in Europe will notice that it's actually a Zakspeed Capri. So looking at my other cars that I've had from a kid in the box, I think Corgi has quite simply just kept the same interior and chassis, and there's no reason why they wouldn't. Badged as a 3 Litre S. That bit's a little bit lazy, however. But as we can see, it's almost toy-like in its appearance, but I can see there's quite a little bit of potential there, even though it does look a little bit bland at the moment. So I'll get cracking with this one and begin by drilling off the underneath. I've already done a tutorial on this, so if you want to take a look on my channel at how I do this, then please go there and take a look. And this is the bit I always love doing, is seeing what's underneath there from all those years ago. And yep, lo and behold, I'm pleasantly surprised. There's still got the same engine bay underneath, which obviously on this one you can't lift the bonnet up to take a look at, but you can on the other 3 Litre S model that they do. So if I hadn't have done this, that would have stayed under there for eternity. So that's quite a nice little touch. But looking at this chassis itself, it's very, very cheap plastic. It's almost like something out of a Christmas cracker. It really is very flimsy and very, very cheap to the touch. But the body, however, as I've said, there is quite a lot of nice little detail in there. And once you've ditched them wheels off the car already, you can almost see it's almost lost its toy-like appearance already. So as I always do at this early stage, is I'll quickly tap the underneath, and I won't go too in depth in this. I'm just showing you this as part of the process of this custom build, but again I have gone through this on the tutorial, so please go ahead and take a look. And again, a very quick process. I'll show you how I go through the stripping of the paint, and I might even do a little further tutorial on this, although other people have done it. But I use 3 or 4 different methods, but again, just for the continuity of this video, there's a very quick go over my little famous pot of jizz just to get rid of all this paint. And I've left it in there, as I always do, for about an hour or so, and it comes off nice and clean with no drama. And straight away, again, a complete night and day difference. There are quite a few little bits of flash on this, little bits of seams all around, which are quite hefty, and all the thick paint has probably hidden that over the years. So I will give it a light sanding down, and all I'm going to use is a very, very fine sanding stick, nothing too harsh at this stage, just to bring them down a little bit. I don't want to lose too much details by going over anything else, so I'm just giving it a very, very light going over. But what I want to do on this one is just to give it a bit more continuity, because front to back there are a little bit of pitting in the casting. So I'm just going to go over it with this wire wheel and give it a light polish, just to show you the difference between spending 10 minutes or so just going over the car. So all I'm doing now is just putting a little bit of a light polishing compound on there, all over, and then giving it a final buff up. So it's been a wire wheel a light cutting compound and a slight buff, and it's only taken me 10 minutes, as I say, but it finishes the car underneath the foundations of it, at least, a little bit more even front to back. And the camera is picking up some slight little bits of pitting again over there, but when you're actually touching it and having a good look, again, the paint will fill in all that, so it's not too much drama. But it comes up quite nice and bling. Could almost leave it just like this really and have it as a bit of a showpiece, I guess, but probably need a little bit more work if you want to leave it as a little chrome one. But nevertheless, as you can see, it's a really good casting underneath. Now the Zakspeeds, with them having the big fat arches on there, the back needs to be a little bit more dished. So I've got some of these wheels that I've got off another Hot Wheels, and then the rear ones I've got off again another Hot Wheels, but they're big enough for the width that I want, but obviously not the same style as the ones on the front. So my plan is to drill them out and dish them. But before I get there, we can see just mounting them Hot Wheels and axles on there, there's a little bit of the chassis that's fouling. So I'm just going to go and give it a light tickle and cut this off, just so we can get clearance of the wheels. And then on the front, there's little I've got to do on there. I haven't got to cut any axles up, I haven't got to mess around with any wheels. I can just do this very slight modification on the front of the chassis, and that's just with a little bit cut out. I think we just need to give it a little bit of a light filing just to get a few more little bits of clearance in there. And as you can see, with little drama, it fits and sits on there nicely and moves along, so all's good on the front. Now with the rears, as I say, I want to use these wider track rear tyres, but I still want to keep that same rim. So my idea here is to sand down the rim that I want and cut out the hole on the bigger wheels to get it to fit in. So what I'm going to do is hold it nice and sturdy so I don't take the skin off my knuckles, and then just very lightly just sand it down a bit. And you could file this down again if you wanted to. Take a little bit longer, but you'll get there in the end. Too much pressure and heat on this plastic though, and it literally just melts together, so you have to take your time and be a little bit more careful. So going on to the actual tyre part that I want, if I just split them off the axle and then set it up on the drill press. And I'm just going to speed this up slightly because it did take a bit of time just to do this, because as I said, too much heat in it and it all starts to melt together. So I went slower than I should have done normally, but it came out not too bad at all actually. So this is the basic idea behind it, just to fit that rim over that tyre. So a little bit more playing around with both of them and we'll get it nice and done. So a quick sand, and I'm glad I'm only doing the front, well the two rears actually. I'm not doing it all on all four tyres, because even though I enjoy doing this hobby very much, there's little bits, the little fiddly bits sometimes that are best spent elsewhere, and it can make your concentration levels dip down a little bit. So all I'm doing again is just using a rotary tool and just reaming out the back a little bit just so the front will fit in easier, like so. And a little bit more fettling around and she'll be done. So again, with a little bit more fettling round here, just a few cuts, a little bit of paint front and rear so it all matches up nicely. So there we have the finished part, and as you can see when we put it all back together again, we've got quite a lot of excess axle on there, but the wheels fit under there nicely. And again, I've modified the chassis a little bit at the rear again like I have with the front, but we need just to make this axle a little bit shorter. So after all that, I'll cut it back off again. So I'll get it back on my scroll saw, and just to prove for the health and safety amongst us, they are very, very fine little blades. They don't do much damage. Nice and slow when you're cutting through things, but again, you can put your finger on it, and as long as you're not too stupid, it doesn't hurt you at all. So all I'm doing now is just trimming that back of the rim off, just to give it a bit more clearance when it sits back under the car. What you can see now is what it looked like before and what I've just done by cutting it down. Obviously I need to tidy it up a little bit more, but you get the overall drift of what I'm trying to do there. So once they're both done, I'll put them both on the axle again, and for this time you can see that little bit that I've cut under from the back of the wheel sits in a little bit more smoothly. It hasn't got that nipple on the front. That was fouling the chassis before, but it sits in there quite nicely. So I'll just trim this axle overhang back a little bit, and this time how I'm going to attach the wheels on this one is, because it's just one end, I'm simply going to just add a little blob of solder, and whilst it may not look pretty in its initial appearance, once it's done, just spend a little time giving it a file round and you've got yourself another little matching rivet head type thing, wheel nut. And as you can see now, it's because of these nice bigger wheels, though they look good, it is fouling the arch a little bit, hence it's doing a lock up. So all I'm going to do again is get out the rotary tool and just trim these rear arches back a little bit, grind them right down. It's a little bit of a suck it and see really, just keep offering it up to the car, seeing if you've taken enough off. If you haven't, keep repeating the process. So there's no real mathematics to my calculations of doing it really, it's just keep taking bits back until it sits nice and smooth, which it finally does. So going back to this interior, it's a really good little interior. However, I don't really want to use this because the Zakspeed Racers obviously were a silhouette race car, and they had bucket seats, harnesses, roll bars, proper race car. So, and I don't really want to waste this engine that was underneath. So as it happens, it coincided with this great little bucket seats and spoilers coming from edition 6. So if you haven't already seen this guy, here on YouTube and on Instagram and Facebook. I will put all his links in the bottom, so go and check him out. But for something as small as this, I've got to say, I've built many resin cars that have been up, you know, nearly £100 at times, and always covered in flash, which is inherent with resin parts. But this I've done nothing with at all, and for something so small, there's loads of detail on them. And again, in this little kit, there's a spoiler. Really good quality, really good quality. And if you've never used resin parts before, just a little bit of sanding, and that's all it takes, is a little bit of sanding to get them right, and you're good to go. But as I say, there's virtually nothing on these, and there's a little fire extinguisher, NOS bottle, whatever you want to use it for in there. Really good quality parts, so it's going to go just perfect with this. So the guy is on Facebook, Twitter, eBay, Instagram, YouTube, so enjoy the sweets that he also gives you, and I'll put all his links in the description at the bottom, so go and check him out. So obviously I've got to have something decent to complement that now, and I'm going to really skip over this rather quickly. And I say skip over it because I've got carried away whilst making this video, hence it's taken so long to upload it this time. And I've basically made another whole half an hour of me building this interior. So though I'm skipping over quickly this, if you want to and there's enough interest, by all means I will do a little, almost a tutorial, but a feature just on how I've built this. But in essence, it's evergreen styrene. There are other styrene makes out there, but I prefer to use the evergreens one for all the different shapes and sizes that you can get. And it's literally as quick as that. Wiping the little magic, it's not glue, bonding agent. It basically melts the two parts together. You don't technically glue each surface, you'll rub it just across the joints as I'm doing now, and effectively it melts and welds itself together in an instant. So you don't want to put a lot on, you literally are just wiping a small amount, and away you go. You can start making anything with it. It's a good reason why scale modelers love it and architects love it. You can make virtually anything. I'm just double checking that the platform sits all right, which it does, and then I'll carry on making other parts to this. And the reason why I didn't want to skip this part in its entirety is purely because it is an integral part of the build that I'm doing, but I'm also mindful that it's not exactly a die-cast restoration. I'm going into model making now, so hence if you are interested I will do another feature on it. But once I've finished it, goes hand in hand with this whole Zakspeed that I'm building. But by speeding up this process, you can just see sort of my rationale for building a little interior. Just putting in the main tunnel, rear wheel drive as they were. So I had a nice big tunnel underneath. Just crafting a little bit of the dashboard. And again, there's that many different shapes and sizes of this stuff. I've amassed that amount over the years. Some of these parts I'm literally making out of scraps that are offcuts from other models that I've built over the years. So I can honestly say I don't think I've bought any styrene in the last probably 7-8 years. But here's a small little tube section that if you just put a little bit of mind to some of this, what I'm making here as a little steering wheel. Like that. Some small little gauges that if you work quick enough, because the liquid does dry up rather fast, but if you're quick they stick pretty much in an instant. So here you have roughly, minus a few other little details, dashboard, the business end of it. And all I'll quickly do, as I mentioned earlier on this superb little seat, is just knock a little bit of flash, and there is only a little bit, but compared to some of the other kits I've seen over the years, that's minimal, really minimal. I haven't had to fill in any of these either, which you often sometimes have to do with resin. It's good to go, and it looks, starting to look, should I say, a little bit more detailed than the standard 4-seater of the 3-litre S, which just wouldn't have worked well at all in this build. So just finishing off this very quick skip over of what I'm doing on this interior is its roll bar. I nearly did the paper clip and solder that I've done in the past, but whilst I was still on the styrene, I thought, well, what the hell, I've still got loads of these little offcuts I'll carry on, and they really are offcuts. I'm just lucky really that I've got all the little bits that I needed without having to crack into any packs of new stuff. So here we have the roll cage. Good old helping hands coming in, as I say, handy again to get this bit done. And as quick as that, we're all done and dusted. And some very final little details to put in there is the opening to the fuel cell that it had in the back of the race cars. So here we have the finished bit. I'm just going to primer this up, and we're going to leave it primed as well because the finished car is going to be white, so I'm going to leave this finished in the white primer because it'll just be easier to hand paint afterwards. It'll grab on it a little bit better. And there she blows. That's what she looks like when she's finished. Could almost do a little caged race car just on this, I guess. But obviously I've done the body and the chassis as well in the primer, so I'm just going to quickly paint over this. And again, this is a very quick overview. I use various Tamiya acrylics, some of the flat paints and some of the gloss paint. It depends on what texture I'm doing, and I often start off with the flatter matte paints and then build up with the gloss over the top, which is a little bit easier. And just going around all the car, putting all the little details in just to finish up. Some little faces on the gauges. Sadly my hand isn't that still to put any needles on there, but finally, to finish off, I use some vinyl sticker cut to size to make some miniature replica harnesses. And I use the vinyl sticker, which is a little bit fiddly at this scale, I'll be honest, but the reason why is it sticks, and it sticks with minimal trouble. and stays there. Last little bit of silver paint on there to replicate the buckles, and there we have my finished interior. I say this was a quick overview, it's taken about 10 minutes to tell you all that, but it'll go hand in hand with this car. Now I've come to the end of it. There wasn't a lot to do modification body wise on this other than flat out all the pitted areas, but once it's painted I always like to try wherever I can to do the rubber seals around them. Then, like I've always done on my other cars, is make my own decals. Again, I've done another tutorial on that if you want to take a look on my channel. It shows you how I do them. And just as a bit of a teaser for the finished one, there's no question what I'm doing now in the Worth livery, which I believe raced in the German touring car. Well, no, it was the Group 5, it was the special homologated cars, but it was very complex doing up. There was probably the most amount of decals I've ever put on one this scale actually, so it did take me some time, but there's a lot of overhangs around the arches and this front valance, so that's how I do it. So let's have a quick look at how it originally looked. As I said at the start, I could see potential in there. It was a great looking casting, although it looked a little bit toy-like, but you can sort of put that down to the generic wheels that they put on them. But I thought, if we get rid of that interior, do something with the livery, we'll come up with something special. And here we go. My take on the Worth liveried Zakspeed Capri from the 70s, and I still think they look as fresh as anything now. They're a really good car, and if you look on YouTube, you'll find loads of footage of them, because a lot of guys have got them up and running in this historic racing now. But here you can see the dished wheels on the back look a bit better than just leaving them how they would have been on the front. It would have looked a little bit daft, I think. Finished off with some of the details of the headlights and indicators and stuff on the rear, and I've filled in the little side air ducts from the arches. Can just about make out the interior in these shots. May seem overkill all that to some of you, but like with most of my creations, I know that they're in there, and I like to put a little bit more effort in. But this is my take on the Corgi Zakspeed Capri. I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, my friends.